You open your eyes to chaos. Not the kind that comes with thunder and rain, but the kind that smells like hot metal and old fear. The air is thick with smoke and limestone dust. Outside the window, gunfire echoing against the Alps like the heartbeat of something ancient and dying. For a second, you think you've woken inside a dream. American and German soldiers shoulder to shoulder on the ramparts, firing into the mist. The uniforms don't make sense, the flags don't match, and yet they're fighting together. I'm reporting from the strangest battlefield in human history, a medieval castle in the Austrian Alps, 5th of May, 1945.
This is Stenmark. The castle walls are falling, but the garrison holds firm.
The dawn offensive is underway.
The war in Europe is ending. Hitler is dead, Berlin has fallen, and here, at Castle Itter, enemies have decided to fight side by side. It's not a metaphor. It's not a trick of the fog. It actually happened. Today we step inside the last battle of Castle Itter, a story so absurd it feels like fiction. But it isn't. This is the day the world turned upside down, when American GIs, Wehrmacht soldiers, French VIP prisoners, and even a recovering SS officer fought together against the fanatic remains of the Nazi SS. In this fortress, built to keep people out, humanity broke its own walls down. To understand how we ended up here, with enemies turning their rifles in the same direction, we have to rewind the story to the war's final fevered days. Castle Itter, a medieval stronghold perched above the village of Itter in Austria's North Tyrol. It's the kind of place that should have belonged in a fairy tale. Instead, it became a prison. In 1943, Himmler's SS seized the castle and turned it into a VIP detention site, a subunit of Dachau. The prisoners here weren't soldiers, they were symbols. Former French Prime Ministers Édouard Daladier and Paul Reynaud, Generals Gamelin and Weygand, Marie-Agnes de Gaulle, sister of Charles de Gaulle, politicians, resistance figures, even a famous tennis champion, Jean Barotra. They were the political chess pieces of Europe, kept as bargaining chips for a Reich already running out of moves. By the spring of 1945, Hitler was gone. The Reich was collapsing like a stage set, flames behind the curtains. But chaos. Chaos doesn't surrender. SS units roamed the countryside, executing deserters, civilians, and anyone they called traitor. And in that confusion, the guards of Castle Itter simply vanished. The French prisoners suddenly found themselves free, but trapped. No guards, no orders, no protection. And all around them, the forests crawled with desperate SS fanatics who would shoot them on sight. Freedom, it seemed, was now a death sentence. That's when one man, a Yugoslav handyman named Zvonimir Kuchkovic, decided to slip out of the castle. He mounted a bicycle, stuffed a plea for help in his jacket, and rode straight into the heart of chaos. He pedaled through bombed villages, avoiding SS patrols, until he reached the American lines. But fate, as always, had a twisted sense of humor. His message didn't reach the right command in time, and back in Castle Itter, the prisoners feared he was dead. Days passed. The war outside was ending, but inside the castle, time froze, until the cook, Andreas Krobot, volunteered to go next. And his journey, that one, changed everything.
Halt! Zeigen Sie Ihre Papiere!
Andreas Krobot rode downhill through the misty valleys until he reached the nearby town of Wurgl, a place teetering between surrender and chaos. There, he met a man who would rewrite the meaning of loyalty, Major Joseph Sepp Gangl. Gangl was Wehrmacht, a decorated German officer who had fought on both fronts, east and west. But by May 1945, he was done fighting for madness. He'd seen too much, lost too many, and realized that the real enemy was no longer across the trenches. It was behind him, still shouting, "Sieg Heil!" He and a handful of his soldiers had already defied orders, working with the Austrian resistance to protect civilians from SS executions. And now this cook, trembling and out of breath, told him there were high-profile French prisoners up the mountain, about to be slaughtered. Gangl didn't hesitate. He knew the SS would show no mercy. He also knew helping the French meant betraying everything the Nazi regime demanded of him. He made a decision that would define his legacy. He would save the prisoners, even if it meant joining forces with the enemy.
Imagine that. A German officer, swearing an oath to Hitler, now walking across enemy lines, holding a white flag, not to surrender, but to ask for help.
Across the river, he found Lieutenant John C. Jack Lee Jr., 27 years old, 12th Armored Division. Young, tired, no patience left for paperwork. When Gangl told him about the castle, Lee didn't even blink. He just said, "All right, let's go." So here's your cast of characters. A handful of American tankers and infantry, a German major and 10 of his men, a Czech cook, and a couple of Austrian partisans. Together, they formed one of the strangest alliances in military history. They rode out in a single Sherman tank nicknamed Besotten Jenny and a few trucks. Barely 30 men, half of whom had been enemies days earlier. Their destination, a medieval fortress crawling with fanatics. The roads were mined, the bridges half collapsed, the radio static useless, and yet they pressed on. At one point, an SS roadblock tried to stop them. They fought together, Americans and Germans, side by side, returning fire. When the smoke cleared, the roadblock was gone, and the strangest feeling spread through the group. They trusted each other. By sunset on May 4th, Castle Itter appeared through the mist. And for the French prisoners, it must have felt like salvation in the shape of a tank. That night, the fortress came alive. Men in different uniforms. American olive drab, German gray, Austrian resistance rags, fortifying walls, dragging ammunition, setting firing lines. The tank, Besotten Jenny, was parked at the gate like a guardian beast. Inside, candles flickered over maps and ration tins, and for a moment, history held its breath. The French prisoners, restless and proud, refused to hide. Prime ministers, generals, even Barotra, the tennis champion, all insisted on fighting. No one wanted to die in a cellar. There was irony in the air that night, the kind that makes you laugh quietly, just to stay sane. Here were the same men who once sat in Parisian parliaments, now arguing over rifle calibers with German soldiers. And in one corner, an injured SS officer, Kurt Schrader, sat sharpening his knife that he'd rather die fighting Nazis than join them again. War had blurred every line. Dawn was coming, and with it, the last battle of the war. The first sound wasn't a scream, it was a cough, the stuttering bark of a machine gun from the woods below. Then came the echo. The hills answered. The last battle of the war had begun. I crouch behind the parapet, rifle cold in my hands. Through the mist, muzzle flashes flicker like fireflies. The SS are probing the defenses. One round cracks the stone beside my face. Fragments sting my cheek. Inside the courtyard, the French VIPs refuse to hide. Reynaud, a former prime minister, stands beside an American gunner, reloading belts with shaking hands. Barotra, the tennis champion, jokes as he hands out ammunition. Not quite Wimbledon, eh? Someone laughs. It's the kind of laugh that belongs to people who have nothing left to lose. As dawn breaks, the SS emerge in full force. Nearly 150 men from the 17th Panzer Grenadier Division crawling through the tree line. They're not coming for victory. They're coming for revenge. Then, Besotten Jenny roars to life. Its turret swings. The gunner unleashes a storm of tracer fire that rips through the forest. For a moment, the sound drowns everything. The shouts, the prayers, even fear itself. And then, silence. Only the wind through the mountains, and smoke curling from the barrel of a tank that shouldn't have been here at all.
Keep firing! Hold the line! Reload the machine gun, quickly!
The SS regroup fast. Mortar rounds begin to fall, thuds that shake dust from centuries-old ceilings. One shell lands near the main gate. The blast knocks me flat. When the dust clears, Besotten Jenny is burning, her radio fried, her main guns silent. Now it's just us. Rifles, grenades, and stubbornness. Then I see him, Major Joseph Gangle, darting from cover, dragging one of the French leaders out of the sniper's sights. A single shot rings out. He falls before he reaches safety. Time seems to freeze. A German officer dies saving a French statesman, killed by his own countrymen. The irony is unbearable. And yet, there's a kind of peace in his face as they carry him inside. Gangle is gone, but his choice, that reckless, defiant choice, keeps everyone else alive a little longer.
They call this the soldier's peace. A fragile moment carved from the chaos. When morning comes, they will be enemies again.
People like to say war makes monsters of men. Maybe sometimes, just sometimes, it shows the exact opposite.
Keep firing! Hold the line! They're in the trees. We need support on the left.
By midday, we're running out of everything. Ammo, water, hope. The castle walls are cracked open like old bones. The SS tighten the ring, shouting promises of mercy that no one believes. Captain Jack Lee scans the horizon, radio useless, jaw set like granite. That's when Jean Barotra steps forward, sleeves rolled up, eyes bright. "I can make it," he says. Lee stares at him like he's insane. But Barotra is serious. The man once known as the Bounding Basque still has legs like springs. He grabs part of an American uniform, climbs the rear wall, and drops into the trees. Gunfire erupts instantly, but he's already gone, zigzagging through the forest like a ghost of the old world, sprinting toward the new. Hours crawl by. Each explosion feels closer. Then, from far down the valley, the faint, unmistakable growl of engines. Tanks. At first, we think it's the SS bringing reinforcements. But then we hear the sound no one expected. The wild cheer of American voices. The 142nd Infantry has arrived. The SS break. Some throw down rifles, others vanish into the woods. The castle breathes again. And just like that, the war, at least here, is over.
We are saved.
When the shooting stopped, the silence felt heavier than the noise. We buried Major Gangle in the village below, with Austrian flags draped over his coffin and American soldiers standing guard. Captain Jack Lee received the Distinguished Service Cross. The French VIPs went home to rebuild a country. The castle still stands, scarred but alive, perched above the valley like it remembers every echo. It's said this was the only battle of the war where Americans and Germans fought together as allies. That's true, but what it really was proof that even at the end of the world, people can still choose decency. The Battle of Castle Itter wasn't about flags or orders. It was about the moment when ideology collapsed and humanity stepped forward. It showed that loyalty means nothing without conscience, that courage isn't owned by any uniform, and that sometimes the smallest alliance, 20 men against hundreds, can echo louder than any victory parade. So if you ever find yourself waking up to the sound of gunfire on the edge of history, remember Castle Itter. Remember that even in the ruins of empire, compassion can still take up arms. In the last days of the darkest war, enemies became brothers, and for one brief dawn, humanity won.
Castle Itter, May 1945.